everybody. I'm Dr. Christy Taylor, founder of Work Solutions and Work Global News Magazine, and I'm excited today to bring you another one of our great Changemaker interviews. Today, I'm talking to Mike Turner. He is a strategic leader, brand consultant, and president of a corporate Toastmasters chapter. He has over a decade of experience spanning business growth, customer success, and brand development. And he helps professionals and business owners sharpen their presence and accelerate their performance. Hi, Mike. How are you today?
Hey, doing great, Dr. Taylor. How about yourself? Thank you for having me.
I am so great, and it's so good to have you. I think we talked a little earlier. We started Work Global News Magazine back in January, and you are about interview number 48, meaning that we have had an opportunity to really have some impact and power and connect with people and feature change makers like you. Mike, before we get started in today's interview, I just wanted to go a little bit deeper. Feel free to share a little bit more about yourself because you help people to scale and expand in their companies. And I didn't read your whole bio. So definitely, is there anything you want to add to that maybe that I missed?
Yes, I do have a passion for helping people and businesses thrive in different economic atmosphere and business environments. I have a strong background in starting in sales, corporate sales, consulting. I'm a certified business coach as well. I've worked with industry leading tech companies, venture capitalists, things of that nature. So I really pride myself on staying on the cutting edge of technology and bringing those insights to businesses to help them flow and and gain efficiency in their operation and branding.
Well, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because you have really built, when you talk about your passion and commitment for technology and helping individuals and people to really expand and build their brand. Now, you have built a reputation for being able to bring clarity and structure to both corporate teams and entrepreneurs. So, let's talk about what really sparked your passion for this kind of results driven leadership.
Well, good question, Dr. Taylor. I grew up in an environment where clarity and direction weren't necessarily guaranteed. So I learned early on that structure creates freedom. So over the years, I observed and noticed how leaders with strong systems and presence created real change. So that inspired me to lead with results and not just vision.
Can you talk a little bit more about that when you talk about leading with results and not just vision? Because I love that initial answer that you gave about structure creates freedom. Now I'm a military girly myself, right? A veteran, and when you're experiencing
Thank
that,
you for your
right, when you're going
service.
through the process of implementing structure, it doesn't feel great, right? And for some
Yeah.
people, it's really hard to stick to. So can you kind of harp a little bit on that ideology of structure creating freedom?
Well, yeah, I know that vision can be fun and sexy, quote unquote, and things of that nature, and it can really fire people up. But the rubber hitting the road is very important, and that's where the structure lies. The day in, the day out things that have to be executed in order to get results and make things happen. So, in my opinion, that's a very important piece of the equation.
Yeah, because so many people, you have great vision, but poor execution, which can lead to, and that poor execution a lot of times is due to a lack of structure. So I think that it's so important. And I love the way that you have this commitment to helping your clients to really put that type of structure in place. And we're going to talk about that throughout this interview. Now, you have said that your work is all about helping people move better, faster, clearer, and be more aligned. And I think that has a lot to do with that structure you're talking about, right? Can you just break down, what that looks like in action for a business or a brand?
Yep, absolutely. So, what that means is simplifying the path to progress. Less friction, more flow. So, what I do is I help people align their voice, their brand, and system so that every move feels intentional. And that alignment builds confidence and momentum fast. So, I like the saying you can get from New York to California a lot of different ways. You can walk, you can ride a bike, you can take a car, or you can fly a jet. So, that's my thought process. And I much rather help people to take that airplane versus the other options.
Now you focus really on business coaches. I want to spend some time here where you talk about helping people move faster, clearer, and be more aligned. Can you give me some examples of how a client, some challenges that clients may be experiencing when they come to you, and maybe from a case study perspective, how you have helped clients to clarify their purpose, their vision, and to move through that process. Now you don't have to name specific organizations. We'll speak in terms of examples A and B, but give me some examples of some of the challenges your clients have faced and how you have helped them to become faster, clearer, and more aligned.
Absolutely. So I've worked with small business owners who had to adjust to the technological advances in the market, and they really didn't know where to turn because they were used to doing things in an old school manner in regards to technology, a little bit behind the curve. So, I've helped them to adopt the fact that technology isn't going anywhere, and to accept that, and to implement strategies that will help them to thrive. And they've actually adopted those, and I've helped them to grow and scale their business. There's other situations where I've helped larger companies, medium-sized businesses, multi-million dollar operations, CFOs, and financial teams to help their operation to flow better, in terms of the finances, and by incorporating technology and automating certain systems to enhance those processes, to eliminate some of the manual work that has bogged them down and negatively impacted their ability to be strategic like they really want to, and work on the business instead of in the business. So it worked out in a lot of cases. So I really stand by that philosophy.
I 100% agree. I think that when people are coming to you, and this is what I say every interview, one of the things that makes us so unique as coaches that each of us has our own backstory, right? And we have the experiences that have gotten us here to where we want to go. And maybe sometimes you might have clients come to you because they're experiencing these pitfalls or these challenges. And how would you say, because we're going to talk about how you support these high performing leaders, but before ask you that, I just want to know, just kind of caveat that by saying, even though you as a coach might have all of these great suggestions and recommendations for clients, how open to them are they always open and receptive to navigating that change process with you, or is that sometimes a hard mountain to climb?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it's not always a cakewalk. So different strokes for different folks. Sometimes people adopt to it quickly, and sometimes it may take a little time for some people to see the light. But the bottom line, one of the most important things is them getting it and getting there at some point. So not always a walk in the park, and sometimes I have to, maybe paint the picture in different ways, or show them from different angles. And so that's why I look at things as from a case by case basis when dealing with my clients and business partners, not necessarily a cookie cutter approach. So you're absolutely spot on, Dr. Taylor. It is sometimes it's fast, sometimes it takes a little time, but we've been fortunate enough to get results either way.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent approach because one of the things that I really love in just reading about you and having an opportunity to connect with you is that you don't have a one size fit all approach for working with your clients. I mean, who would want to work with a coach who, if the only thing, if I come to you and ask you a question, you're giving me the same answers and solutions that you're giving everybody else, right? Sometimes a copy and paste approach can work, but I think it's so important that people know that you, as a coach, you're going to listen to your clients, you're going to bring in all of this wealth of experience, but you're going to work with them to tailor a customized approach. And again, I'm a career coach, so I 100% know that sometimes it takes a while for people to get off the hamster wheel. But the common thing about change is that it is a process, and we have to approach this step by step in terms of what works for the client. But the great thing is that you're bringing all of this sales experience and all of this experience of scaling companies and helping organizations to grow. So you kind of seen it all. Now, one of the things with you is that you are so committed to supporting high performance leaders, but you have also led teams and initiatives yourself. And I think that that's why you have made that commitment, right? It comes from experience. What leadership lessons have shaped your approach over the years?
Well, hmm, there's been a lot, but one big one that I'd like to key in on, and that is that I've learned, Dr. Taylor, that people don't need micromanagement. What they need, in my opinion, is clarity and confidence. So I've personally learned to lead with calm, set a clear standard, and build systems that let others shine.
And I think that goes back to the question I asked on how are you helping your clients to navigate change? Because we know sometimes as coaches, even on our end, it is about having a high level of emotional control, emotional intelligence, right? And so you having that calm approach to leadership and thoughtful execution and this demonstration where it's like, okay, I'm not going to get caught up on the hamster wheel with you. I'm going to coach you off of that, and we're going to focus on getting the results. That is so important. Now, what else do you, in terms of your approach to leadership, and I know that you have a coaching program that you are launching. Let's talk about that a little bit and talk about how you are guiding your clients through that program using all of the things that not only the expertise you have in building and branding and scaling businesses, but also in terms of your leadership style. How does that work dynamic work for you and your clients?
Yes, again, it's very bespoke, in terms of that program. It focuses in on, like you mentioned, strategic scaling, leadership velocity in different arenas, amplifying revenue, brand authority, marketing. So it encompasses a lot of different things. But my approach, once again, is bespoke, leading from the front, bringing insights, being innovative, and having service at the heart of it all. A genuine intention to help and serve the people that are my clients and partners in that situation.
Let's dig a little bit deeper with that, right? Because you are here to help your clients. You have your coaching program. You have your other businesses that you're involved in. So your consulting work, you really blends brand operations and execution, as you mentioned. And so when you talk about some of the challenges that your clients may come to you, and what's the biggest thing that is holding back most businesses from being scalable?
Well, that's a great question. Too often, in a lot of cases, the brand says one thing, but the back end doesn't necessarily support that. So if your systems and your messaging aren't aligned with, with aren't aligned and intact, growth seems to stall from what I've noticed. So I help close that gap so that everything just flows and it scales together holistically.
So walk me through the process, Mike. All right. So I am coming to you. I am a new business owner. Now, there are different types of business coaches. I think we should clarify who you support, right? Are you supporting people who I just started my LLC, or maybe I've been in business for 2 years, or or do you support everybody that comes to you? Is there a certain niche that you support, or are you open to coaching anyone who has opened their business and is ready to scale?
Yeah, I mean, I would say all sizes, all shapes and sizes. I'm a people person. I enjoy sharing insights and knowledge with business owners and entrepreneurs. So again, I work with people that are just getting started all the way up to nine-figure, corporate executives. So there's such a wide range in terms of size. But yes, engage when people engage with me, it starts with discovery, consulting, figure out where the holes are, and if I have viable solutions to help to fill those gaps, I'm happy to share that with the with those people.
Yeah, so what I really like again about your approach is one, you're open because I'm learning more about you as we do this interview. I had an opportunity to read about you, but this interview is like really letting me know who you are in terms of how you connect with your clients. Because one, you bring it in all of this experience. Two, you have a very calm nature about how you're going to approach because you understand as a coach that although a client may they come to you because they know they need the help, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean just because a client comes to you that they're gonna be receptive to that help. But the last piece you just pointed out there is as you go through that discovery process with a client, how you make sure that the client is a fit, that you are what they actually need, because and that you guys are gonna be able to work together. So you have mentioned as part of this interview, you've mentioned a couple times that organizations have to have systems in place. That if we want to own a business, scale a business, or whatever it is we want to do. If the back end doesn't match the front end, for example. So we talked a little about that there has to be systems and culture, that these are non-negotiables in growth. So how do you help teams or entrepreneurs really install the right structure without feeling overwhelmed? Because it definitely can be.
It can be, yes. So my thought process on that is you want to crawl before you walk. So I take more of a first off a big picture look at the situation, and then we set priorities. So we decide on what's the most important things to focus on first
Mhm.
to help move the needle. The most impactful things for us to get the best ROI, and then we go from there. So it's not a shotgun approach. It's going to be a little bit, it's going to be innovative, but it's also going to be methodical at the same token. So I would say really prioritizing, really understanding, and doing a comprehensive audit of the situation before we start the execution process.
Now, Mike, I'm sure that you have run into this where um, a client comes to you and they have 1 million ideas and they want to execute today, right? So, what is that process like for you as you're listening to them about all of their great? Because you know what, that was me. That was me. I run this career coach firm, but I worked with my coaches. I had a million ideas about things that I wanted to do, right? And it was like,
Yep.
Chris, you got to just focus on one. And I see that over and over again with people who are going into business. So when you talk about prioritize, how do you get that client to slow down and really say, okay, what are we going to prioritize? What is going to be the focus?
Well, I'm gonna break my rule, and I'm gonna answer a question with a question. And my question for you is, how do you eat an elephant?
No, no, I've never considered it.
Okay, one bite at a time.
One bite
So
at a time.
one bite at a time. You can't eat that whole elephant in one sitting. So
And I can tell you how my mind works, right? Like I just was like, okay, I've never considered it. So should I be
uh,
planning to eat it? But yeah, but it's true. It's one bite at a time, right? Getting
one
that
bite at a
person to
time.
really, really focus, because that I think, and that's why a lot of people find themselves in a position needing people like you who have the experience to really help them to focus in, gain that sense of clarity by really being able to prioritize. Okay, yes, I have all of these great ideas, but which of these ideas are going to get me an actual ROI, right? Especially if you're bootstrapping your business, you need to be able to bring in some cash and some money, right? And so a cash flow, some type of cash flow. So having a million ideas doesn't always work. So I really, thank you for the how to eat an elephant question.
You bet. And
Okay.
I'm also Dr. Taylor, a big fan of a mutual success plan. We map out a strategy, a strategic approach on how we will, eat that elephant one bite at a time. So we'll have some direction and we'll implement timelines, and then we go from there. Of course, I make sure that they understand that Rome wasn't built in a day, and we won't be able to build Rome in a day either. So, that's my methodology, and that's the approach I would take in that situation.
I think that this contrast that we just had here is a great example of why people need business coaches, right? Because you asked me how to eat an elephant, and I started planning. Well, should I hunt it? Do I use fire? Do I cook it on a wood stove? Right. But I think that that analogy, that metaphor is kind of what I was really like thinking. Okay. In terms of like what your clients are experiencing, this big, fuzzy, full of ideas, and how you really are helping them to bring that down, prioritize. And like you said, you guys are creating this mutual plan, because that's the role of a coach. That's the role of you as a champion, being there to guide and walk them through that process. So we talked
Absolutely.
about systems, we talked about culture, and let's talk about strategy, because we know that culture eats strategy, right? As
Yep.
someone who really strives in both strategy and communication, what advice would you give professionals who are trying to sharpen their execution presence to elevate their brand voice?
Hmm. Interesting question, Dr. Taylor. So I would say start with self-awareness and take that and package it into consistent language, visuals, and behavior. So, in other words, you don't necessarily have to be loud, just aligned and intentional.
Mind and intentional. What do you say to that person who their first approach to this in terms of strategy is to be loud?
Well, I would, I would advise them to really read the room. And sometimes being loud can be an asset if you're looking at it from a standpoint of being bold. But I would just advise them that it's just not always the best approach. Just like there's different tools for different types of jobs. So you don't use a hammer to put a screw in the wall. You use a screwdriver. So I wouldn't just beat them down for taking the loud approach, but I would just let them know that there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah, and sometimes I mean that loud metaphorically. Like sometimes we can be loud in the room, but I think that sometimes as business owners, they say, "Hey, you have to stand out," right?
Yep.
And metaphorically, loud can also mean that, where we talk about you think that you have to have everything has to be big and bold. I was having a conversation with a colleague the other day who was getting ready to start their business, and I'm like, we're going through this process of just talking about our different approaches. And she talked about how she met a man who was a millionaire from simply owning a fruit stand, and he didn't do any type of major marketing. It was word of mouth, right? But see, my
Wow.
first thought if I was opening that fruit stand would be, I need to be loud, I need to be bold, I own a fruit stand, right?
Right.
But he was able to make that money quietly and build his business through strategy, through that level of through word of mouth, by just being really good at what he did and building a reputation like that. So I think
Love it.
that, yeah, to your point, it's like you don't always have to be the loudest person in the room, but you do need to be the best person in the room, right? You need to be really good at what you're doing because that is going to speak for itself.
It's
So,
powerful.
you know,
Powerful.
uh, when we talk about communication and strategy too, and speaking of being loud, I want to just ask you a question on people with their brand and pitching themselves, right? We talk a lot on being able to, from a business standpoint, being able to really say who you are and what you do, the standard pitch speak, right?
Yep.
Pitch speech. Any advice on that? And I think too, to your point about reading the room, is there a time to do this, not to do this, or should we always be ready to pitch, right? Because I've done it before, walk up to somebody and just go, "Hi, my name is Dr. Christy Taylor. I own this, da da da," but then read the room.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, good point. So yes, I don't think that it's always the right time. So that takes a little bit of EQ, like you mentioned earlier. That's where the EQ comes in. That's where the business acumen comes in. That's where the reading body language comes into play. So it's not just always appropriate to just go out and pitch, but I think it is important for you to have a pitch and that starts again with back to self-awareness and just really understanding what you do, what you bring to the table, your value prop, how you help people, and do have that ready. But just I wouldn't recommend taking a shotgun approach and just putting that in front of everyone at any given time. I would suggest to just throttle it back a little bit and make a conscious decision on when and where and how to deliver that.
And when you're coaching your clients, is it just all business all the time when you're coaching your clients? Are these intangible soft skill type of things that you kind of just guided us through with that question? Are these some of the things that you coach your clients on in terms of the know when, how to read the room, how to pitch yourself, right? When to say certain things. Is this part of the strategy that you teach your clients when you're doing that one-on-one coaching?
Absolutely, yes. If the situation calls for that, soft skills and soft insights certainly come into play. So again, that's why I prefer the bespoke approach over a cookie cutter, one size fits all. So I really liked and choose and prefer to get in tune with my clients to really get a comprehensive understanding of what they need, and then I try to serve them in the best capacity possible.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I asked you that question, right? Because so many times people think that when they're working with a business coach, they think that the business coach is only going to cover, here's how you make a business plan. Here is a strategy for scaling your business. What's your value proposition? No, that coach is actually really coaching you to really be able to present yourself in a way. And that could include some soft skills coaching too, right? In terms of how to present yourself so that you represent your brand from a total package perspective and not just the things are reflective on paper. So I'm glad that we were able to kind of throw that in there, right? And you giving an example of how you walk through those processes. I'm going to transition a little bit because I'm going to talk about the importance of staying relevant, and then some of the other work that you do in the community. Now, when we talk about you as a coach and you as a business coach and person in the community, you do so many things, from your work with Toastmasters, which we're going to talk about, to the work that you do with your clients. And I am pretty sure that you are always taking some class or doing things to upskill, right, to stay relevant. And so staying relevant and people focus is just really a big part of your work. How do you personally stay sharp, innovative, and aligned in such a fast moving space?
Yep. Well, what I try to do, Dr. Taylor, is stay close to strategy and execution. I read, I observe, and I test things. So, but most importantly, I stay rooted in service. And my thought process is, when you stay focused on helping people to solve real problems, the innovation tends to come naturally.
I like that, right? And it was something that you said, that you pretty much stay in strategy and execution mode. And then the other piece of that is that you are always testing. Because again, and I think that this is why so many folks miss that, are a little bit resistant to change, because when you're trying to scale a business or you're trying to do something new, most people are not willing to test. They just want to immediately execute. So I'm so glad that you mentioned the importance of, it's great to have an idea, it's great to want to do something, but you have to be willing to test it first in some instances, to try it out, right? But the mere fact that you're willing to test it out, I think that that takes a certain level of bravery, because some people are not even open to that.
For
Now,
sure.
Mike, you serve as a president of, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing in the community. All right.
Yep.
You serve as president of a corporate Toastmasters Masters chapter, and you advise a nonprofit. So, how do these roles really influence your consulting work? But feel free to kind of elaborate on what you're doing in the community. Why is, some people may not even be familiar with Toastmasters. So, let's start from the very beginning here and kind of explain what Toastmasters is, and then how are you using all of these efforts to really influence your own consulting work as well as your community?
Yeah, great question, Dr. Taylor. So Toastmasters is an organization, an international organization that's been around for, last year was the 100-year anniversary. So they've been around since 1924. It's when it was founded. And basically, it's a a leadership development organization. So I know when a lot of people that are familiar with Toastmasters, when they hear that, the first thing that they probably think is communication and public speaking. And those are certainly a major part of Toastmasters. And people derive benefits in those areas. But at the core, it was very interesting to, once I got into it, to discover that it's really a leadership development organization. So through that work, I've been able to mentor people and help them to go from being shy to being very solid and great public speakers, excuse me, and to sharpen their interpersonal communication as well as leadership skills. So it's really a treat to see people blossom and develop over time through that organization and through that corporate club. And we were able to gain President's Distinguished Honors, which is the highest honor that
Mhm.
a club can get. So kudos to my entire team to help to make that happen. In terms of the nonprofit, I'm working with a nonprofit out of Alabama, and right now I am nominated. I'm on the a friend of the board, the advisory board right now, pending the vote to be on the board of directors on this upcoming vote here that should be happening soon. But they are a dental nonprofit, and they have what is called a free dental day, where they pull together dentists in the area, and they help less fortunate people that are economically challenged with free dental work, and doing things in the community of that nature. So fortunate to be a part of that, to give back to the community. But through that, as well as corporate leadership and business ventures, I'm learning to bring clarity to different teams, and that constant exposure sharpens both empathy and structure for me.
The way that you speak in terms of the level of, I would say a eclectic talent that you are, because you're doing all of these things in business. And when you just talked about you serving on that board, I would have never guessed that it was the board is doing dental work for people in the community, right? But I just think it shows that, one, the skills that you have, they're crossover. They can go into many different industries and sectors, right? And you do not pigeonhole yourself when it comes to your talent and how you're leveraging that to support people in your community, how you're leveraging that as an opportunity to push out your dreams, and how you're using that to inspire other people in the business sector. So you're bringing a lot to the table, and you should just give yourself a round of applause for that, because that takes a lot of energy to and commitment to be able to keep all of those I would say planes in the air, right? Now, when times get tough or momentum slows down, mindset has a lot to do with some of the successes that you're having, because I'm pretty sure that you have run into challenges and so my question to you is, with all the things that you are trying to balance and keep afloat, what mindset do you maintain, or habits that you use to help you kind of stay focused and lead with consistency?
Mm. Yep, certainly. You're absolutely right, Dr. Taylor. I mean, it's not always a breeze. So I would say two P's: purpose and perspective. So what I do in those situations is zoom out, focus on the data, and ask myself, what's the next right move? So I don't necessarily rely on motivation, more of a slow burn approach. And again, back to systems. I go right back to relying more on systems than motivation.
So if I come to you, Mike, because I need some help and support with my business, what I can expect is to sit down with you. We're going to go through that discovery process, and you're going to ask me questions to really get to know who I am, and you're going to figure out how we can connect and how we can really build. And it is a mutual agreement, right? And in terms of a mutual partnership, in terms of how we're going to work together. And I think that that is so great. All of these things that you're bringing to the table, and the other piece of it is that Michael is not just providing this tangible type of coaching where it's like, okay, I'm going to help you get a business plan. I'm going to help you to write a vision and a mission. Those are great. That's good. But when it comes to you presenting and building your brand, he's also working with clients based on what they're getting to the root cause of their needs, and really helping them to hone those skills that they're going to need to present themselves in public and really to be the face of their brand. Am I getting it right? Am I hitting the nail on the head there? Did I miss anything about the work that you do, Michael?
Absolutely. The last thing that I would add, you know, if I can give some advice to people in this space, I would say build from clarity. I'm not a hype man, so not hype, but focus on results, build real systems, be consistent with your message. And my methodology on this one is if your foundation is solid, then growth won't shake you.
I love that. And I think that that's some wise advice. So, Mike, this has been a fantastic interview. So, what do we have coming up? Where can people find you? And of course, we're going to have all of Mike's information in our description box. And again, when we feature change makers in this series as part of Work Global News Magazine, we are really demonstrating a commitment to highlighting diverse groups of people who are not only effective and impactful in business, but are also in their community. Because Michael is president of Toastmasters, and he's bringing of his Toastmasters chapter, and he's bringing all of those skills and leadership experience from both corporate industry and what he's learned, and to be able to mentor and coach people to be able to reach their dream and goals. In addition to some of the boards that he's serving on. So when we're talking about being a person or prescription for change, you can start right where you are. And so we want to make sure that we connect and share Michael's information. And Mike, so where can people find you, your website? How can they connect with you on social media?
Yep, you can connect with me on LinkedIn Mike Turner International. Also, MikeTurnerCoaching.com, www.MikeTurnerCoaching.com. Email me info@MikeTurnerCoaching.com. And I love to chat with you. And thanks so much. This has been a real pleasure speaking with you here, Dr. Taylor, for sure. I
Thank
appreciate you.
you, Mike. Thank you. And we look forward to continuing collaboration. You can check out Mike's article on work globalnews.com. Check out his interview on our YouTube and across our various social media sites, as well as Apple, iTunes, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.
All right. You too.